I'm just gonna say it, right? If more people, more white people would stand up against racism, we could probably get it to damn near end, y'all. I'll stand up for it. I know racism isn't right, but I need more white people to jump on this train to help me take a stand against racism. There are white people out here, y'all, that's got people thinking that we are all racist when that is not what's going on. So we have got to put a message out to take a stand against racism. Like, I will start it off. I don't care. I will stand alone in it if I have to. But if you're a white person and you're with me on this, help me push the content out. There's only one way to do this, and it comes with just being in unison. That's the only way. There is power in numbers, y'all. I don't care if you're black, Mexican, Indian, Asian, whatever it is that your race, ethnicity is. You don't have to be white for me to like you. And everybody else that feels this way, I need you to get on this train right now.
Hello guys, welcome once again to the channel. I hope wherever you're watching, you're having a great time. Now, over the years, we have always talked about how American creation was meant to favor whites and not blacks. If you look at the foundational document that created the America as we know it, we have realized that the Constitution with itself did not even recognize that America will be inhabited by people of color, and therefore they didn't want anything to do with blacks. Look at the slavery. When slave trade happened, and during that period, blacks were confined into the region where they were working to make America be what it is today. But in as much as they were involved in the building of America to create the country that we know today, nothing was created to favor them or even to support them or even to pay them for their hard work that they carried out over the years. In today's video, we're going to focus on this. I came across a clip where some white guy was speaking about how blacks have endured a lot of sufferings in America, and they are currently seeing these things because for many years they have always been taught that systemic racism or even just racism within itself does not exist in America, and that everybody was supposed to pull themselves by the bootstrap and have that opportunity to be great. They think that Americans have equal opportunities, and therefore blacks should not be blaming whites for the low income within their communities. So this white guy was speaking and saying that he has now come to realize that blacks have had a lot of unfair practices subjected to them, and therefore he's apologizing and is coming out to state that America has never done justice to blacks. So I wanted to take a listen to this clip and hear some of the reactions that different people have about systemic racism in America and why there is need for blacks to be respected and given better opportunities to have a fair opportunity towards upward mobility. Let's watch this, come back, and I'll give my commentaries at the end.
My black brothers and sisters across this country, I'm sorry. I'm asking for your forgiveness because I see it. I see men like me rolling back the protections for equal employment rights that you fought centuries for. I saw it yesterday as we incarcerated a generation of your children and then profited off of their unfair sentences. I saw it in the history books as men who looked just like me imprisoned and shackled people who looked just like you, and then built a nation off of the backs of your ancestors' labor. My seat at the table of privilege gives me the ability to easily ignore the scraps of food that fall on the floor that you have to fight for. Professional cowardice is a learned behavior, and because my rights are handed to me on a silver platter in this country, I can say and do whatever I want, which includes being complicit through silence and inaction. For too long, I've carried your cause in my heart and shook my head disapprovingly as the bad things happened, all the while knowing that I was going to be just fine. I can't do that anymore. And I'm not asking for praise or adoration, I'm asking for direction. Help me understand how to fight for you. Give me the words to say. Give me the places to march. There are plenty of us that need to be emboldened by what you know. that need to have a fire lit in our souls that will cause us to speak up, not for our own justice, but for yours. So please continue to look men like me in the eye and say the things that need to be said, because for every one of us that would oppress you, there are those of us that want to liberate you. And I understand it may sound disingenuous. You don't know me, I don't know you, but I care. And I'm asking for your forgiveness because my inaction has contributed to your plight. But I'm here now.
I'm going to say this again, even though it might be hard for people to hear. If you do not understand that we have systematic racism in this country, then either A, you do not have any people of color in your life, in your circle, or two, you do have people of color in your life, in your circle, and either they've told you what they've experienced and you don't believe them, or you're the kind of person where they don't feel comfortable sharing their experiences with you because they know that you have racist ideas and beliefs that you have not deconstructed yet. So they don't feel safe talking to you about their truth and their experience. Now, really quick, the place that I'm coming from is a place where I grew up listening to the evening news every night, where, in the 80s, where in Topeka, Kansas, where it seemed like every single evening news, local evening news, was talking about how some man of color broke the law or something like that. But they very, very rarely talked about corporate crime, white corporate crime. And plus, I lived in a white neighborhood. The third thing is I went to a church. The congregation was 99% white. My school was 99% white. My parents didn't invite people over that were people of color. I was not introduced to people that looked different than I did. And so I grew up with these biases and prejudices that I didn't really fully acknowledge and recognize until about 12 years ago. And I had to do a lot of deconstructing. So I think a lot of people that say, oh, well, I'll give you an example. Oh, Turning Point USA can't be racist because black people work for them. Okay, here's the thing. And I've talked about an article on here before, but I will just briefly summarize. There are organizations like Turning Point USA and Proud Boys, organizations like that, Nick Fuentes, who prey on the vulnerabilities of people of color. And Candace Owens is also one of them, who subscribe to this idea that, oh, you can be successful in America and don't blame it on your race or your sex or your gender or whatever. Like, you need to, stop thinking like that, right? Or the people that are out there that are saying that our schools are teaching critical race theory when they don't know who the founders of critical race theory are. They don't know what critical race theory is. They forget that critical race theory is a theory, and they also don't know that critical race theory is something that is taught in law school, not in your high schools, and most of the time not brought up in freshman undergraduate general ed courses. So what changed for me? What changed for me is I started listening, and I started to let go of ego and acknowledge, even if it was just to myself, this is what would happen. I would be in my car. There might be a man of color who's walking on the other side of the street, not even coming close to me, but something inside tells me to be afraid. And that's conditioning from my childhood, from my upbringing, right? From the news media, from the neighborhood I lived in, right? Take your pick. And so I would make sure that my windows were up and my car doors locked. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing that all of my adult life so far, I have, this is a conscious bias and prejudice and fear, and I had to start to dismantle it. So this isn't something new that I'm just starting to dismantle. I started the process of dismantling this 13 years ago. And also what changed for me is I started listening to people of color. When I moved to the Denver area, where there's a lot more diversity from, Emporia, Kansas, I started listening to my coworkers and the experiences that they were sharing with me. And thank goodness that maybe I had done enough work at that point where they felt comfortable to talk to me, and I appreciate their trust. And they shared some crazy ass stories and things I couldn't even believe. I believed them, but it's just something that I would never experience as a white woman. And I'm not talking about being followed by a store employee because they think you're going to steal something. I'm not talking about that. And I'm talking about blatant racist behavior, especially by the police. And I'm just like I said, I would never experience that as a white person. I never have. So I just started listening to more and more people of color. And I started to see certain things for myself. For example, in 2012, in the summer of 2012, I was headed to a concert with a friend of mine. He's a black man, long dreads. And, this is before I met Tony, so when I say we were walking down the sidewalk holding hands, you'll understand. Okay, so we're walking down the sidewalk holding hands, and there's this, going to the concert, getting ready to go to the concert, and there's this guy standing by the band has their tour bus, standing by the band just outside, and he sees us walking down the sidewalk, and the look that he gave us is a look that I've never experienced on my own as a white person. And we passed this by, we passed the guy by, and I turn to my friend and I say, "Oh, that's what it's like?" And he's like, "Yeah, yep." And I want to end with this. If you're one of those people that are saying, "Well, I don't see color," well, that doesn't make sense. What color is this on my shirt? We've got purple and yellow and blue, and you're like, "What? No, Becky, skin color. I don't see skin color." I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense to me. That's not logical to me at all, or realistic in any way. It doesn't make sense to me is what I'm trying to say. It's because you recognize the colors out in the world, but yet when you see a person, you don't recognize that, oh, she's really pale with freckles, or that person has darker skin tone. That person has a really, really dark skin tone. Oh, and that's different from me, Are you trying to say that? Are you trying to say that you can recognize all the colors out in the world, but somehow when it comes to human beings, all of a sudden you're colorblind? No. I think that what people mean when they say that is that when they see a person of color or a person that has a different skin tone than they do, they don't judge them in their mind, or they have absolutely zero biases and prejudices. But a lot of times those people saying that are the very people that are not acknowledging systematic racism in this country. They think that because they don't treat people of color differently, then that means every single human being in the world doesn't do that. And I'm saying to those folks, you need to get out and start joining community activist groups. You need to start widening your circle. and you need to start listening, and you need to start doing a lot of fucking reading and watching videos of people of color from all different backgrounds and all different ages talk about their experience being a person of color in this country. And until you do so, I cannot engage with you because you have not done your work. It's what I call willful ignorance.
It's crazy how people claim that there are no systemic issues and then try to make the argument that there may or may not be individual people who cause problems, but the system itself doesn't have a problem. Because it's as if we have forgotten to ask ourselves, what are our systems made of? What are our systems comprised of? Our systems are comprised of people. Our systems are made of people. So when we refer to disparities within a system, we are referring to the way in which people within that system interact with each other. For example, if I refer to the disparities within our criminal justice system, the statistics that we list off, the data and evidence you provide to demonstrate that some people are treated differently than others in our criminal justice system, that boils down to how historically judges who are people are more likely and have been more likely throughout history to provide harsher sentences and to give harsher punishment to one person over another for the same crime. It refers to how jurors who are people are more likely to convict one person over another for the same crime. We can link these things to race, ethnicity, gender. It refers to how prosecutors who are people are more likely to pursue harsher punishment for one person over another for the same crime. It refers to how public defenders who are people are often without resources, deprived of the necessary resources needed to provide a proper due process for their clients. So understand that we're referring to how people interact with each other within a specific system. Same thing with our health system. When we refer to health and medical disparities, the numbers we give, the stats and the data that we give, it can be reduced down to the fact that historically speaking, doctors who are people are less likely to believe that someone is in pain based on their gender, based on demographics. It could be boiled down to how research, which is conducted by researchers who are people, oftentimes don't look at the ways in which certain things may appear in certain people. Certain skin conditions may look different on different color skin. How certain things may present differently in children or differently in different genders. It refers to how politicians who are people are so pushed and motivated by their own political agenda to cut resources and funding, which then has a subsequent effect on other people. Because usually what they cut, things such as Medicaid, Medicare, child care, research for children, what they cut tends to impact those in our society who need the resources the most. So understand this idea that we don't have systemic issues, and you try to qualify that statement by saying there may be individual people. That is part of the systemic issue. That contributes to the systemic issue because our systems are made up of and comprised of people. Full stop. So when people ask, do you believe that we still have systemic prejudice? We still have systemic racism? The response is, are people still prejudiced? Do we still have people who are racist? Because you know what I would define as a systemic issue happening right now? An example of systemic racism? The outright removal of history from national parks and museums because an individual doesn't like how that history makes America look. So they abuse their power to erase that history. That is a systemic issue that has trickle-down effects. Trickle-down effects to what's taught, to our education system that they are already trying to attack and are attacking right now. Trickle-down effects to what students learn, what people are understanding to be the nature of this country. Trickle-down effects to what people are privy to, what information people have access to. Trickle-down effects to how people view other people. So that is a systemic.
Being black in America means that your life is always up for debate. It means that they can kill you and convince the world that you did it to yourself. Because let's be real, being black in America means getting treated like a criminal when you're the victim. It means you could be begging for medical attention in a jail cell, and they'll still watch you die and then write natural causes on the report. It means they can hang you from a tree with a fractured skull and bruises all over your body, and the police will still say suicide. Let's stop acting like the system is broken. It's not broken. It's functioning exactly how it's supposed to dehumanize us, to criminalize us, to erase us, and then gaslight the world into thinking it was our fault. And y'all still think we free? We're living in a country that could watch us die and still find a way to justify it. Because being black in America means you don't get the benefit of the doubt. You get suspicion. You get blame. You get silence.
I wonder if all those people who said black people have been complaining for nothing and systemic oppression no longer exists, if they're still talking the same stuff that they've been talking. Because looking at the current administration is what we're going to call it, and all the way he's rolling back all the DEI programs, he's like deleting all black people from the White House website. He's like rearranging the National African American History and Culture Museum. He's like doing all of this stuff to like minimize the contribution of black people to this country, ensure that we don't have representation in any sort of positive light across the country, ensure that any kind of gaps that systemic oppression has caused and had been being lessened, or the gaps had been being smaller, he's ensuring that that's no longer happening and trying to put it under the guise of merit-based leadership. Like, all of this crap he's doing is obviously racist, obviously against black people and people of color in general. But black people, we got a long beef against white supremacy, specifically in this country. And I just people have been like, yeah, no, there's nothing that black people can't do that everyone else can't do, or like, no, there's no powers that be that's against black people. Like, what do you see what we're talking about? Like, I feel like now it's overt, but it's still technically covert. It's still technically him saying stuff like, we're eliminating DEI programs because people should be able to get there on their own, while of course ignoring the historical oppression that has happened. So it's still like, if you are willfully ignorant enough, he still is giving people like a grain of an excuse to be like, no, he's not racist. No, this is all right. Oh no, this is all fair. And I'm just like, this is what we see. And you see how they're trying to make it look like it's not, but this is how it's always been. Like, that's what my thing is. It's always been policies or like changes or just stuff that they do that they know for a 1,000% fact is going to disproportionately impact black people. Like the the powder versus the rock situation, where a certain demographic of people did the powder. And so if you got caught with a powder, they didn't make it against black people, but they said if you get caught with the powder, it's, you know, you get a slap on the wrist. But if you get caught with the rock, which is then one they know that was more widespread in the black community, you get life in prison. And so, like, stuff like that is what they do. They say it's not about black and white, but then they do stuff that they know for a 100% fact intentionally impacts black people more. But people still sit here and say, black people, you got nothing to worry about. Black people, stop complaining. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There's no systemic oppression. Look within your own community. You guys need to hold yourselves accountable. Oh yeah, there's no positive media representation because people in the black community aren't doing positive things. Y'all are the ones who want to listen to rap music and shake your behinds on the television screens. That's your fault. But they never talk about who owns the distribution channels. Who owns the things that are putting out these messages about black people? Is it black people? No. Name a black person who owns the biggest media, one of the top 6 big media companies in the United States. I'll wait. Crickets, but it's black people's fault that the propaganda against black people is so perverse. It's the black people's fault. Oh, because if no one in the world, because they wouldn't have the stories if black people weren't doing the stuff that they were talking about. So you want every single black person in the United States to be perfect all the time. That's what you're saying. Where you're saying, oh, you know, if black people weren't, you know, doing stuff, they wouldn't have anything to report out on the news about us. So you're saying the fact that like 80% of crime coverage on the news is all about black people, when 80% of the actual crime being committed across the United States is white people, you feel like that's our fault that we're committing too much crime. And it's not the fault of the people who are reporting out the stories. And they're picking and choosing what stories they want to report out. And they just happen to always pick the stories about black people. It's just like, I feel like it's willful. It's got to be willful ignorance. You have to be trying to be dense on purpose. It's like you don't, at this point, you don't want to know the truth. It's not that you don't know the truth. It's like you don't want to know. You don't want to let go of the bias that you have. You don't want to acknowledge the systemic oppression that black people have, because then you have to acknowledge that all this time you ignored it, or all this time you felt like it wasn't happening. And so you're just like, oh, it's easier just to stay in denial, and that way the truth is never true because I don't believe it. I don't know. That's it. I was just like, I was thinking about the Amanda Seales Surrounded podcast from Jubilee, and I think she did a great job of articulating why black people are still oppressed, but to see how many black people and thus I know how many other people of races across the country feel like it is black people's fault that we are as a community in the position that we are in. I'm tired, y'all. I am tired. Like, oh, y'all shouldn't be shaking y'all behinds. Like they're not going into impoverished neighborhoods and picking the loudest, ratchetest, ghettoest women that they can possibly find and then putting them on the big screen for everybody to see. They don't go to working class black neighborhoods and saying like, hey, I choose you to represent the black community. No, they're going to the ghetto. They're going to the places where people are uneducated. They're going to places where poverty is rampant and saying, I pick you. And then they're also doing that because, one, those people are uneducated and they don't know what they should say yes or no to. They just see dollar signs and you're like, okay, cool. And then those people don't even realize that they're like signing their entire lives away. They're signing these freaking 8, 9, 10 album deals, knowing that you can't get 8, 9, 10 albums out for like 20 years. They're literally signing like 20-year contracts with these people, going into debt with these music industries, trying to get a leg up, and really they're just another pawn in the system. But it's black people's fault. They're just pushing the narrative that pays them the most, and the narrative that pays the most is the one that white people want to see. Like, that is what I call it, the white gaze. Like, the male gaze is like, it appeals to the male gaze. it is the white gaze. They are appealing to the white gaze, and the white gaze enjoys watching black people in positions that they're familiar with seeing black people in. They're familiar with us being the maid, the cook, the cleaner, the bus driver, the imprisoned person, the prisoner, the slave. That like they're used to seeing that, and so when you see that, or the comic, the clown, like the musician, even like the entertainment, like they're used to seeing black people in those spaces, and so whenever you try to take a movie and put a black person in a different space, like that's not going to sell because that's not what they want to see. That's not what they're used to seeing. That's not what makes them comfortable. Seeing black people successful, like for people who have been raised in white racist, white supremacist America, it makes them uncomfortable.
It's not about color, but you still haven't elected a black president. It's not about color, but your gerrymandering affects predominantly black and brown areas. It's not about color, but you make sure to bring us up when you talk about crime and being poor and mooching off of the government. It's not about color, but anytime you talk about people being unqualified for jobs, they're always black people. It's not about color, but you so easily close the borders to brown people while inviting white South Africans in. It's not about color, but you have 0 black women in your party. It's not about color, but your policies have taken the jobs away from black women the most. It's not about color, but you only threatened HBCUs after it happened. It's not about color, but him having multiple babies mamas was acceptable. So if it's not about the color of a person's skin, but everything you do negatively affects black and brown people the most, either it is about color or you're just incompetent. I got a feeling it's both, though. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Now, welcome back to the channel. Listening to how the people who have talked in the clip are really expressing themselves, you get to understand that this realization about how America has been unfair to blacks is coming to everybody, and they're realizing that America has not been doing what it needs to do, or it has not been giving blacks the accolades that they deserve to get. Remember, these are the people who worked in the United States and made it be industrialized as it is today. So the industrial and agrarian revolution that happened in America were championed by blacks who were providing that labor that was much needed for the revolutions to happen. But then if you look at how the governance structure was built, they did not cater for these people. They were not even allowed to vote. They were looked at as people who are not fully human beings. Therefore, they didn't even deserve the respect that any normal human being should get. Systemic racism in America has been perpetuated through centuries of institutional design meant to exclude black people from social, economic, and political progress. From slavery to Jim Crow laws, and later through redlining, voter suppression, and mass incarceration, every era introduced structures that maintained white dominance. These systems did not rely solely on overt racism, but were embedded in laws, policies, and practices that shaped access to housing, education, healthcare, and employment. Economic exclusion has been one of the strongest pillars of systemic racism. After emancipation, freed black people were denied land ownership, fair wages, and access to loans. The 20th century deepened these inequalities through redlining, discriminatory lending, and employment discrimination that prevented wealth accumulation. As a result, the racial wealth gap persists today, with white families holding several times more wealth than black families, a gap not caused by individual efforts but by institutional barriers. Education has also been a powerful tool in perpetuating systemic racism. Segregation, underfunding of predominantly black schools, and biased disciplinary practices have limited upward mobility for black students. Even after Brown versus Board of Education, de facto segregation remains, reinforced by unequal district funding and residential segregation. The education systems meant to be a ladder of opportunity often become a circle of disadvantage for black communities. Policing and the justice system further reflect the entrenchment of systemic racism. Black Americans are disproportionately stopped, arrested, and incarcerated for the same offenses as whites. Policies like the war on drugs and mandatory minimum sentencing targeted black neighborhoods and fueled mass incarceration, breaking families and destabilizing communities. This criminalization of black existence continues to echo in contemporary policing and judicial outcomes. Recently, more white Americans have begun acknowledging these injustices, driven by movements such as Black Lives Matter and widespread access to evidence of racial inequality. The realization that America's progress was built on racial exclusion has sparked difficult but necessary conversations about privilege, restitution, and reform. This growing awareness among whites mark a shift towards collective responsibility, recognizing that dismantling systemic racism is not a favor to Black Americans, but a moral and national imperative for justice and equality. And that really explains everything that has been happening to blacks. We have seen them being blamed for being the highest people who commit crimes in America, yet their population is lower compared to whites. But look at the systems, how they work. They have never been fair to black people. When it comes to war on drugs, blacks will be incarcerated at a higher rate compared to how their white counterparts will be incarcerated. If you look at the access to good education, blacks never get this access because the neighborhoods where they come from are having underfunded schools running up. So how can they have equal access to opportunities when employment is discriminative, education is discriminative, and many other things? This really tells you that blacks have endured years and years of unfair treatment in America, and this needs to change with the current governments that are coming, because they need to realize that this history that was hidden can never be hidden anymore. Share your thoughts down in the comment section, and if watching us for the first time, please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share. Thank you, and let's meet on the next one.